The new generation of video game players doesn't like to lose. That's why they prefer team games, because they can blame the opponent for their losses. Recent statements from Katsuhiro Harada have started yet again the never-ending discourse in the fighting game community, but this time I want to try and add some extra context to it. We can assume that Harada meant this talking about the popularity of the different genres of games. But we can start and end easily this kind of discussion just talking about how accessible team games are. They're often free to play, or very cheap, or they don't even require a high-end computer. To the point that just blaming these youngsters who cannot handle a loss sounds too simplistic. It's not the real reason. Regardless of that, this fear of losing discussion has been always around the fighting games community. Everyone has heard or said at least once, new game bad, old game good, this new game is there for noobs or new players to make them win sometimes, which reinforces the idea that this new generation of players is either too fragile or soft. And this kind of mentality was directed towards all aspects that make a fighting game, such as input complexity, rushdown games, comeback mechanics, vortexes, gases, combos, damages, you name them. There's a general perception among the community, especially from older players, that these aspects have been changed to allow weaker player or newer player to enjoy the game and enjoy some wins. Yet after decades of fighting games, the ending is still the same. There's one player who's the winner and one player who's the loser. New players are gonna lose a lot, like everybody did, and they won't even realize what the hell happened on screen. They will just feel the frustration they have and eventually give up. But fighting games are not the only kind of game that has this outcome, right? Failures, losses, deaths, game overs have always been part of almost every video game around. But I started to feel like the community and the developers are more focused on why new players are losing instead of how they're losing. What are they left with after a loss? Which I think needs to be addressed more. In team-based games, it's easier to have a good feedback even if you lose. You start by playing with other people and do 0 kills, 11 deaths, and no assists. Yet you can still feel the thrill of a win while having a good time with some friends or some random people. Then something happens. You get a cool, sick-ass headshot, even if it's just luck. Or you manage to free a lane in League of Legends. I don't know, I haven't played that game in 10 years. Or you maybe have a clutch defense in Rocket League and you save the game for your team. Even if you didn't do no points, no goals, whatever. You just have one single action and that feels good. The players get the thrill of a good play they just did. And after that, it doesn't really matter if the whole team just wins or loses. Even in defeat, there's a good memory the player is left with. A track of an improvement they want to recreate, or just that simple action, they want to do it again. While we know that team-based games are very popular recently, even if they always have been, there's tons of 1v1 games where the outcome is always the same and doesn't feel like it triggers players the same way as fighting games do. And in these other games, there's still a huge skill gap between the new player, the intermediate player, and the advanced player. We can think about sports games like FIFA or whatever it is called right now. Card games like Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, racing games, whatever. There's always 2 players competing, one wins and one loses. Yet a huge difference is perceived when comparing fighting games to other 1v1. The entry-level knowledge a player needs to know to have even a slight of idea of how the game works is very deep, or at least that's how it's generally felt among players. The idea of what a player did wrong and what the other did right might be easier to comprehend once you know the basic rules. Let's just say shooters, 1v1 shooters. This button is for jumping, this one is for your primary weapon shoot. You need to have 10 kills. You have 5 minutes of time, good luck. That's it. Racing games. This button is for acceleration, this button is for braking. The first player to have 3 laps in the first position wins. There's nuances to that, but the basic feeling of the game is quite simple. Then soccer games. We don't need to explain that. We just need to know that X is for passes and square is for throws. I have no idea. Maybe Magic basic rules are a little bit different, but most of players just play with friends and just learn rules along the way, right? Or even if you use like Magic Arena or whatever software you have, the game directly tells you you can do this action or you cannot do this action, so players have a direct feedback of what they're doing right or wrong along the way. Where do you draw a line of basic rules in fighting games? I mean, you can say like everybody has normals, everybody has specials, and specials require inputs most of the time. This is the health bar, you need to erase your opponent's health bar, you need to win 2 rounds, you get a point, the first 2-point wins. That sounds easy. Anyway, this would just sound like explaining system mechanics or the basic of any fighting game. We can argue that basic rules include like frame data, frame advantage, anti-airs, knockdowns, what a melee is or whatever. Maybe, I don't know, would we all agree that these are basic rules? This is a genuine question. Let me know in the comments if you would draw the line here. While I was trying to form this reasoning in my mind, I was trying to figure out another game where the basic rules are quite simple or universally known, but there's a huge knowledge gap to get actually good at the game. And I don't know how to say it, it's the biggest cliche in fighting games. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna talk about chess. Yes, almost everybody has said at least once, fighting games is like chess played at the speed of light or whatever bullshit. I know, but just give me 1 minute. Okay, a little premise. Chess has skyrocketed in popularity due to streamers, due to TV shows, due to the pandemic, whatever. Accessibility plays a huge role in the popularity of the game, of course. It takes 1 minute to just open one of the most famous websites to play chess. You don't even need an account, you don't even need a computer, you can play on your phone. We know it's easy, thus it's more popular. Yet, I think no one will dare to say that chess is simpler than fighting games, or it's just a simple game. I mean, talking about rules, I know there are people who are like above 1000 ELO in chess and maybe never heard of en passant. So even basic rules for players who would be said have started to feel competent in the game is not universally the same. Yeah, but I don't feel there's the same kind of complaints like in fighting games. Anyway, in order to get decent at chess, you might need to solve lots of puzzles, you might need to study one opening and be familiar with endgames or checkmate patterns or tactics or whatever. Yet there's no execution barrier, you just need a mouse or a touchscreen, but the general perception towards chess is that the game is so vast, it's been played for centuries and there's so many positions that haven't been discovered yet, that it's okay to learn what you play. Losing is still frustrating, but the moment the match is over, there's like a huge pop-up that blocks your way to the next match and says, hey, you did 3 big mistakes and you could have won in 2 occasions but didn't grasp that situation. Do you get where I'm going here? What does a Street Fighter player see the moment they lose a match? They just see a big ass "Ryu wins" in their screen and a bunch of buttons that say hop into the next match or go into training with the character that just beat your ass. And it's not like the tools to actually improve are in the game, because we know Tekken has an amazing replay study and analysis function. Plus R and Under Night have replay takeover to actually recreate a situation happened in an online game. But have you seen the achievements on Steam of how many players have used the replay function? You should, because in Tekken 8 on Steam, so I don't know how the PlayStation scene is, only 23% of players have used the replay analysis at least once. 23%. I wonder if casual players or newbies have even an idea of the existence of these functions, you know? And anyway, as I was mentioning just a moment ago, all fighting games have few functions when the match is over, and they all push the player to the next game. Rematch, queue again, go in training while still in matchmaking queue, being in training mode. Yes, there's also get in training mode against the character you just lost to, but you don't even know what to do because you don't know why you lost. But you're just there practicing your combo or whatever. Your health bar is empty, the set is over, you lost. But keep playing. Don't stop, keep playing. I followed the fighting game scenes since Street Fighter 4, but I started playing actually during Street Fighter 5 because I had the occasion to have a local community who told me everything, who lended me arcade sticks or pads or whatever, and I learned along the way while making some good friends who told me the moment I lost a match, hey, this move you did is very unsafe on block. Unsafe on block means this. So even if I lost 80-0, which really happened for 1 month, I had the direct feedback of what I did wrong and what should I do in order to, while implementing all this new knowledge I have, how to win. We need to address that fighting games are not played anymore in the arcades, whether we like it or not. Because right now, fighting games user interface is still designed for offline play, which is good, but could be better. It leads to fighting games to ask the player to have that will of keep losing. Every good fighting game players will tell you that they lost so many matches before they started to be good. And they did it out of sheer willpower or because they liked the game a lot. They maybe were amazed by Evo Moment 37, or they just had good friends to play with. And while we want fighting games to be more popular, with lots of people currently playing, there are lots of people who are just playing inside their room with their setup and with no direct feedback of how they lost. They're just left with this frustration of all the buttons they've mashed, no gratification whatsoever, and no incentive to just stop and think what happened. We need to start thinking about this because we have the tools, but we do not point at players in that direction. Imagine something along the lines of chess, you know? When the match is over, you have a big red pop-up with the number 3 and the text bubble just saying, hey, you made 3 big mistakes, or you could have won if you just did this. And we know current fighting games have the ability to recognize mistakes, as Tekken showed, but they're buried inside secret menus whatsoever. I'm sure this is not gonna miraculously save fighting games, but this would be a first step towards direct feedback and actually creating a path towards improvement, towards the understanding of what is a fighting game and how it should be played. If you subtly tell the player that the only thing left to do is to keep playing, you're not incentivizing the ability to just stop and re-watch what you've done wrong. You force the player to understand that while the game is chaotic, you need to break down what happened in single instances and just make treasure of them. If you can get a single piece of knowledge very easily, you'll just stop this huge general thought of neutral as something so vague you just need to learn along the way. While we know, like in Footsie's Handbook, the Bible of fighting games, that neutral is composed by several little pieces of knowledge, several little instances that you can break down. You can analyze one single one, and while you start just recognizing every single aspect, you will start doing that automatically, just come up with solution on the spot while playing. And this is the first step of proficiency in fighting games. And this is the way when you start reading your opponents, you are able to recognize patterns in your opponent's behavior, which is maybe the hardest thing for new fighting game players. And when this starts to happen, the game doesn't look anymore so chaotic, so fast, which is a very powerful feeling in your path towards being good at fighting games. We have Lots of communities I encourage you to join. So many content creators who are just doing tutorials in different ways of communicating, tackling different aspects. We have in-game functions that teach you gradually frame data, frame advantage. Yet it feels like only people who are already very passionate about the game get to that level. And we cannot just blame the new players for not having the same passion. So I'm just left with one final consideration, which is we want new players, and even players who don't yet play the game, to be as passionate about fighting games as we are. But how can a player who's playing alone in their room be as motivated when the moment they lose are just left with 10 less points in their ranking and a big ass you lose screen? We can do better. And I think this might help guiding the players towards the beauty of losing. I'm Rappz, and thanks for watching.